Outside-in thinking. Outside-in thinking. And so we all are victims of being trapped in our own heads, right? It's really interesting. We're all a social animal. We all interact with each other, but we all tend to approach things from our own perspective. And one of the things that you have to do is to really break that and to be able to practice outside-in thinking. And so instead of thinking about you, instead of thinking about what you want, right, how do you then put that aside and think of it from them? And why is that important? Because you are too close to yourself, right? You've got all this complexity that's locked in your brain. You've got all these ideas, you've got all these details, and you've got a world of complexity that you're living with in your own personal life that you're trying to sort through. But when you're dealing with somebody else, they can't see that. They can't see that complexity. They see only the surface area, the surface of what you do. And if you expose too much complexity to people, they get really, really lost. And so being able to see things from another person's perspective is really the tool that you can use to simplify in your own life and find the themes in your life. So I was driving down, this actually a couple days ago. I was driving back at home and listening to NPR, listening to, I think it was Terry Gross, Fresh Air. And she was talking about some writer, some Pulitzer-winning writer. And that wasn't the important part. The important part was this writer actually had written Andre Agassi's memoirs. He had written Andre Agassi's memoirs. And Terry Gross said, well, I actually interviewed Andre Agassi a few months ago, and I asked him about that. And this is what Andre Agassi said. And I asked Andre Agassi, well, why did you want this person to write your memoirs? And what Andre said was, it wasn't, well, I'm not a good writer, I need a better writer. It wasn't that. It was, look, I know all the facts of my life. I know all the facts of my life, but I'm too close to it. I don't know the themes of my life. I don't know the story of my life. I can't sort it through. I can't extract out the major themes of my life, and I need somebody else that I can talk to, right, to really see that. And I need a writer or a journalist who can bring it out, who knows how to bring out, the critical themes and stories in my life. And so what we try to practice is this tool. We try to practice the pyramid tool of saying, this is you. You got all the complexities of your life and your thoughts and what you're trying to accomplish, and this is the person outside that you're talking to. And the person can only see a sliver of it. And so you've got to practice taking the stuff in your head and putting it into layers. Putting it into layers where there's a headline, there's an elevator pitch, then there's a full story, and then jam all the other stuff that you have in the appendix. And when you work with people, people have a tendency to want to live in the detail, because this piece of detail is really, really important. And then when you structure like this, you find out that it belongs in the appendix. It's just a proof point. It's not something that the reader has to really listen to at the moment in time. The best metaphor, the best example of that actually is journalism. That's why I love talking to journalists. I love talking to journalists because it gives me a chance to practice the story, and because they're always looking for the headline. They're always looking for the elevator pitch. And my favorite example of this is the New York Times. I have a really hard time reading the Chronicle. Apologies for anybody that's in here in the Chronicle. But the New York Times has a very structured way of approaching articles where, there's sort of the headline, there's the first paragraph that summarizes the whole thing in this structure, there's the first 20% of the article, all right, which is on like page A2 and A3, and then there's the other 80% that's on like page A14 or B14. It's a very, very structured way. And it comes through really, really stark when you read about the Yankees. Because when you want to tell the story of a baseball game, the natural tendency is, well, this is what happened in inning 1, this is what happened in inning 2, this is what happened in inning 3. And if you read these articles about the Yankees, and I try to get my Yankees fix by reading the New York Times, is they actually start with the 9th inning. They actually start with the 9th inning in the first article, in the first thing, because that's a summary. Because who cares what happened in the first 2 innings, right? You just want to know, where was the meat? Was it the 7th inning? Was it the 9th inning? Where's the key part of the game that was the most interesting? And then the next 20% of the article, they actually go back and they start with the 6th inning. And then when they get to the body of it, they actually then go back and start with the 1st inning. It's kind of a weird way of reading about a ball game. It's a backwards way of reading about a ball game, but you tune into it when you read about the Yankees in the New York Times all the time, because they've got the discipline of starting the structure. Here's another structure that we do. We call this a message platform. And we do this in trying to articulate our story that says, it's the same structure. Give me the headline, give me 5 simple statements to tell the story, and then jam everything else as a proof point underneath that headline. And what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to block out all the detail, look at the headline, look at the statements, see if I can see the story, and only then, if I need to, I'll delve into the proof points. If I'm skeptical about betting the statements, then I'll look at the proof points to see, does that back up the statement or not, right? But if I'm not skeptical, then that simple statement is enough. And this is how we tell our story. We tell our story that says, our headline is we're moving towards a subscription economy. This is the new company, all right? The statement one is you look at all these services that we all subscribe to as a consumer or as a business, right? The implication, why is that statement two is, and this is inevitable, technology is driving this way, business models are driving this way, consumer preferences are driving this way, the environment's driving this way. The implication is you need a whole different set of systems. Again, this is our old technology pitch. And the proof points are why you need a different system. And therefore, Oracle and SAP are out of date. If you believe 1, 2, and 3, 4 is a foregone conclusion, and that creates an opportunity to build a brand new company that can be as large as Oracle and SAP one day. Right? That's the simple message. And I stripped out all the proof points, and I'll insert the proof points only in the right part of the conversation. So here's a tool that you can use to practice outside-in thinking. And so pick your environment, right? Practice N-1 thinking. Really toss out frameworks and find alternative frameworks for thinking about your life. Practice outside-in thinking with a pyramid approach for how you communicate, or this message platform approach. The last thing, you can sort of, my slides today had a lot of left-right contrast, right? There was a line in the middle, and there's a thing on the left, and there's a thing on the right. This is a device that we use a lot in our organization, right? Because managing change is really, really important. Being able to draw up the contrast so you can have clear thinking is really, really important. And so interior designers know this. If you ever talk to an interior designer, they walk into a room, and I walk into this room and I see a bunch of tables, right? Interior designers see what's not there. They work as much with negative space as they do in positive space. And it's the contrast of these two things that become really, really important, right? And so here's a simple thing that says, do you see a vase or do you see two faces, right? And being able to turn how you look at things winds up being really important. And so this idea of a contrast of seeing what's there and what's not there, you have to look at both. This dichotomy, this yin and yang of forcing yourself to look at both sides of the equation winds up being really important, because that's where often the truth lies, right? And you do this all the time. You don't just focus on what do we do, you got to focus on what do we not do, right? What do we not do is just as important as what do we do. What's not in scope for this project is just as important as what is in scope. And so when we use this. This is a set of values that we express for our company. And we use contrasting pairs to express our values, because what we aren't is just as important as what we are, right? And so as an organization, we decided that we're focused on customer success, which means we don't treat our customers at arm's length. We embrace them, right? We have to be outward looking. We don't want myopia. We want winning, which means we don't want settling. We want aggressive growth. We're not going to settle for growth that other companies might think are great. We want to be all in our decisions. We don't want this half pregnant, right? We want teamwork. We're not about internal competition. We're not like Oracle. And we want innovation and change. We don't want to settle for the status quo, right? This is really, really important. Bringing out this change really allows you to see things. At Salesforce, the big question was, in 1999, this internet is going to be pervasive. Well, what does it mean, right? And how do you draw contrasting changes to show that everything actually changes? Because then you can go about doing the work of, okay, if things change, what are the implications of that change? How do we create that change? And you're not anchored by the past of what enterprise software really represented. I'll give you a quick example. When we started, we were about 9 months into the company, and we had experienced rapid growth. And we were in a world where we said, the past world, which we call the red world, I really should label this as the red world. And that's why we call this the red world and green world. What is our past and what is our future? And how do we find the biggest aspects of change and the biggest aspects of contrast, right? In the past, we had 7 developers, 2 of them in the US. We had 1 product manager who happened to be the CEO, it was me, right? We had 1 product. We didn't have any live customers. We're just building the product, right? And all of a sudden, poof, we had a different world. We had a different world. We had grown developers. We had real product managers that weren't the CEO. We had 3 products, not 1. We had 10 live customers, but we were still acting. Our behavior was still acting in the red world. And we said, okay, if this is the future, what are the implications of that? What are the implications of that? We needed a support department. We needed a whole test suite. We needed a way of organizing ourselves into groups, because 17 developers are just all tripping each other of themselves. And out of that became 3 or 4 key projects that we need to put in place so that we can transition from the red world to the green world. And when you're in a fast-growing organization, when you're in a fast-growing environment, when you're a fast-growing company, right, when you're trying to double in size every year you're going through one of these inflection points. Every year you're going through a transition from the past to the future where the contrast between the past and the future is very, very strong. And so we train ourselves every once in a while to get in a room and draw the red world and draw the green world and dial up the contrast and really figuring out where are we anchored in the red world, how do we break that, and what are the things that we need to create to move into the new world. Because at the end of the day, leadership, right, there's a phrase called paint by people. Paint by people, and it was a really, really powerful phrase that I've heard. If you want to drive change in the organization, you can only do that through people. And we have a tendency, especially the engineering types, to try to solve technical problems without really thinking about people, right? Thinking about structures and systems and processes and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be all about people. The only way you get scale and impact is really about people. And so how do you drive things through people? And so when you're doing that in a fast-growing environment, leadership is about managing change. It's about managing change and taking people from point A to point B, from the red world to the green world, and guiding them through that thinking in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So we talked this morning about the need for more leaders. We talked in the morning about more leaders, more Asian American leaders across the private and public sectors, right? We also talked about things that were dealt with, stereotypes, right? Things that are sort of mental structures that hold us back. And so really what I wanted to share with you today to apply to any leadership situation is a framework and a set of tools for how to break through where you are today so you can set a goal where you want to be. And if you practice these 5 tools, if you pick the right environment that will get you from point A to point B, right? If you don't fall for the illusion of artificial structures that we all impose on ourselves, right? And in order to break through that and those things that are holding you back, the so-called glass ceilings, and have a structure for doing that. If you practice N-1 thinking of where do we want to be, right? I want to be the President of the United States, right? And well, okay, well, that's kind of hard. So what is the N-1 that I need to do, and what is the N-1 that I need to do? If you practice outside-in thinking, which imposes the simplicity, a discipline of simplicity that allows you to sort through the complexities of your own situation, and if you manage change by always drawing out, this is where I was as a red world, and this is where I want to go to as a green world, or maybe this is where I was and this is where I am today, right? And I'm not realizing that, so things are falling apart. And then really being able to draw up the contrast and finding tools, understanding of how I move from one world to another. These are the 5 things that we do on a constant basis to really break through and have breakthrough growth and breakthrough success. And I thought I'd share that with you. Thank you very much.